If you don't mind just telling us your first name.
Sure. Elijah.
Could you just tell us a little bit about your childhood?
Sure. I grew up mostly in trailer parks in western Pennsylvania, close to Pittsburgh. I moved around quite a bit because we usually got evicted from places because my dad would find some reason not to pay the rent. So I had a fairly unstable childhood. The only stability I had came from my grandmother's house.
Did you have any dreams as a child?
Yeah, when I was a kid, honestly, more than anything, I wanted to be a librarian because I love reading. That's what I did as a kid to get away from everything, was just crack open as many books as possible.
Would you mind just telling us about your relationship with your dad, or lack thereof, whatever that consisted of, and just how that felt for you?
Honestly, my dad was fairly absent, I would say. Like, he was there physically, but he wasn't there emotionally. He didn't want to do anything with me that wasn't what he wanted to do. You know what I mean? Any family vacation we did have, he planned every single second of it. We didn't get to choose anything to do. It was frankly like being dragged along, pretty much. You know, and at this point in time, we don't really talk at all anymore, you know? It's just grown that distance. And I don't really feel any certain way towards it because he was never all that stable of a figure anyway. And in fact, he was actually quite reckless with some of the things, you know what I mean? Like, he exposed me to porn at a very young age, you know, and that definitely impacted me as a person, especially developing into an adult, you know?
How so?
Frankly, it made me sexually mature at a very young age. Like, because I was exposed to strong pornographic material at the ages of 2 and 3, I began exploring my own body by the ages of 5 and 6. And I had a full regimen, if you will, by the time I was about 8 years old.
How do you think that affected your teens into adulthood?
I think what it ended up doing was it made it difficult to understand what good sex was versus what kinky, like, faked sex is, you know what I mean? And ironically, the person who actually taught me what good sex is and what normal sex is actually my uncle, who's frankly an alcoholic and who's never had an actual stable relationship.
How did he teach you?
Frankly, by honestly offering me materials that wasn't, frankly, fetish porn, honestly. He offered me materials that gave me a real image of what women should look like and what they should be like, instead of these weird, unnatural images, you know?
What about your relationship with your mom and how that felt?
Oof, that was definitely the most turmoil I got, because she hated me from the moment I was conceived, because I was an accident. I was unplanned. So I got to grow up listening how I was a mistake, how I was unwanted, you know, how I was something different, because instead of going to the movies that night, they decided to stay in and have sex. And frankly, I'm pretty sure that the family kind of forced them to get married because their marriage anniversary is actually 2 weeks before my birthday, the same year. And she definitely took it out on me a lot. She beat the crap out of me on a regular basis. She called me every name in the book. To this day, she calls me fuckface, shithead more often than my actual name. And it definitely has impacted me quite a bit. I definitely have looked for that maternal figure elsewhere and failed to find it. And I realized that I'm not going to find it, and that's okay.
How did that feel growing up, if you could run through those emotions or talk about those emotions?
Honestly, my entire childhood, I felt alone. I had nobody. The only person I felt that I ever had was my grandmother's, and even then, I only got to see them every couple of months, you know? So, I don't know. I guess it really did leave me empty and looking for something, and frankly, the wrong places.
What's the biggest thing you learned from them, good or bad?
Frankly, what not to do as a parent, and what not to do as a person. They taught me everything I shouldn't do and shouldn't be. The only thing they taught me good was to work hard. That was the only thing they ever taught me, and frankly, they complained every step of the way. And they acted like it was the worst thing on the face of the planet just to go to work every day, to bring home a paycheck to pay the bills.
Could you tell us about your first love and how that felt? It's whatever you associate as your first love, so it can be a person, place, thing, or hobby.
I have to say that my first love actually belongs to music. I can't give that to anybody or anything else. It belongs solely to music because that gave me the greatest escape I had as a child. I started in chorus, and when I got old enough, I was actually able to use my mom's old clarinet to go into band. And that really offered me a place to be myself, to be my own, to do me, to really express myself in a creative way and to make the pain beautiful.
How did that feel?
Honestly, it felt very freeing and it felt very good. You know, but as always, things end up ending in a weird way, you know.
Do you do anything to like keep that love of music alive?
Absolutely. I make sure I listen to music all the time. I still play guitar and I sing on a regular basis.
Who would you say first taught you love? How?
As a person who first taught me love. Is it okay if it's an animal, actually?
Yeah.
The first person I think I felt true love with was honestly the pets that I had around me. It was a Rottweiler named Lexi and a cat named Buttons. Those are my first two, like, those really taught me what love was, you know? Because Buttons we had when I was 3 years old. Like, we got her when I was about 3 years old, and she was there all the way until she died, you know, when I was in, like, 6th grade. You know, and Lexi, she definitely was, like, a huge support system, and she was the only person to ever make me feel safe and protected and actually cared about, you know? Even though she was a dog, you know? She would lay in front of my room at night protecting me, you know? And it felt good to feel that cared about by someone or something, you know? Unfortunately, she ended up being put to sleep because of leg cancer, and yeah, that was interesting because my parents just woke me up in the middle of the night one night and said, we're going to my grandma's, and I asked what was going on, and they didn't tell me. And the next morning they told me, oh yeah, we put Lexi to sleep. They found cancer and we put her down because we didn't want her to suffer. They never even let me say goodbye to her.
When you felt that love, like between the love of, you know, the pet, how'd that feel? I kind of know how it feels, right? You have it, right? Like, can you describe just those feelings?
Honestly, it feels like you have a best friend, like a sibling, like you have someone who's always going to be there with you through thick and thin, and they're never going to judge you, they're never going to talk mess about you, they're never going to betray you, they're just there. They're just there to love you, they're just there to listen, you know what I mean? And all you got to do is give them the same thing back. Just love them, take care of them the same way they do for you.
What's love to you now versus what it was when you were younger? How do those two different loves contrast and feeling?
Honestly, I've always known that love is hard work. It's always been effort, you know, and I understand that more as an adult than I did when I was a kid. I thought as a kid love was something that was kind of just given and that you can kind of expect it, but that's definitely not the case. You have to put effort into the love. You have to show the people that you care about that you care. Otherwise, you may end up losing them one day, and then what? All you're going to do is think about all the things you could have said or all the things you could have did.
By effort, you mean, by work and effort, you mean letting those you love know that you love them, or being available. What's the line between that work and effort and then loving yourself and that boundary?
Honestly, I don't think there really is one, because no matter what, you have to show those people, including yourself. You have to do something for, like, you have to show yourself that you love yourself, you know what I mean? Whether it's treating yourself to your favorite ice cream once a week, or getting a nice warm bath after work every day to relax, or, you know, just anything really, you know, just looking yourself in the mirror and telling yourself you're a badass, you know, just because you can do all these awesome things, you know? And it's the same thing when you love someone else. When you love someone, you just naturally tell them how great they are. You naturally compliment them all the time because they are that great to you. You know what I mean? So that kind of just goes both ways.
What's a good day look like for you?
Honestly, a good day for me, honestly, because I have mental illnesses, a good day for me is frankly a day where I'm not screaming about something that doesn't make any sense. You know what I mean? Where I'm actually I'm mentally stable the entire day without having some emotional break about something or another, you know? Where I can actually focus and get things done instead of being so caught up in a toxic loop of my own overthinking that I lose the entire day and I'm left like, damn, where'd the day go, you know?
What's a bad day look like for you?
Not even being able to get out of bed. Literally being so depressed and so tired and so just done with everything and everyone around you that even the concept of moving a single centimeter out of bed is just like there is a giant freight train on top of you. Like, it's not happening. Like, you literally feel like you're stuck, like you can't move. And even if you want to, what's the point?
How do you work through those days?
Honestly, all you can do is just remember what you care about. Remember the things that, like, remember the people that care about you, remember the people that you care about, the things you care about. I mean, some days you may hate the entire world and the only thing that you give a solitary crap about is that your favorite TV show is going to have a new episode tonight. And sometimes that's all it takes. Other times, you know that you have a family that's counting on you and you have to get up. That way you can support them and do what you need to for them. That way they don't have to feel the same suffering that you do.
How is that suffering?
Well, like what the suffering feels like?
Mm-hmm.
It's never ending. It's like, honestly, it's weird. It's like living in hell in a way because it just never ends. Even if everything's going okay and there's nothing really wrong, you're waiting for something bad to happen. You're waiting for it to fall through. You're waiting just for everything to crash around you, You're constantly looking over your shoulder, wondering who's going to do you wrong next, who's going to do you dirty next, what's going to happen to you next, It's like a constant state of paranoia where you constantly have to watch yourself, and then all the overthinking thoughts and all the bad feelings and even some past memories that you wish you could get rid of, they're all flooding on top of you too. And all that does is just create this giant weight that makes it almost impossible to breathe sometimes. And if you have the right, frankly, issue going on in your life, it will literally cause you physical pain and make you physically ill, where it hurts just to breathe. Your ribs literally ache, and it feels like your heart is literally being crushed and ripped out of your chest. And there's nothing you can do about it except just keep moving forward. Ironically, I actually have that tattooed on my arm.
The moving forward it's so basic, right? Just keep breathing.
Yep. So all you can do is just keep stepping forward, and eventually you'll get somewhere different from where you were at, and that's got to be better than nothing, right? It's got to be better than being stuck on bedrock.
What's a person or an event that shaped you, good or bad?
Honestly, the first one that comes to mind would probably have to be my great-grandmother. Definitely, because she had a very large impact on me as a person from a very young age, because that's who I spent quite a bit of time around as a kid. From like the time, like I remember even like just her walking me home from kindergarten and that, and she had me scrubbing floors on my hands and knees with the old brushes and that, with the buckets when I was like 5, 6 years old, She had me doing the laundry, the dishes. She taught me how to take care of myself and the entire family by the time I was 8 years old. I knew how to, she taught me how to cook. She taught me so much about everything, and she opened my eyes about a lot of things, and she opened my mind about a lot of things too, because she lived an interesting life as well, because she survived through the Great Depression, and she knew a lot more than what people really understood, She understood what hard work was and what suffering was, because she married a husband who was sick, who passed away fairly early into their marriage. And they were lucky to have my grandmother at all. And she was working all the time at the hospital as an LPN, which is actually one of the reasons why I know so much about medicine. And I've always been grateful because everything she's taught me has always come in handy. There hasn't been a single day in my life where I haven't used every single lesson that she offered me.
How'd your grandma make you feel?
Honestly, she made me feel like I had some hope, you know what I mean, in a really bad situation, even though she didn't understand what was going on, because frankly my parents kept her in the dark, whether I realized it or not. But she definitely made me feel seen, and like that I could make an impact, you know what I mean, like I was important enough to teach all these things so I can make a difference in someone else's life, so I can do good for the world, so I can actually put some decent out there. She saw that I had a good heart and I wanted to help people, and she always encouraged that.
What inspires you?
Honestly, making the world a better place, I would have to say, because half the time all I ever do is just try to help people the best I can in any way, shape, or form, Because there's too much nasty out there. There's too much bad in the world nowadays. I mean, I myself have been, frankly, the recipient of more random acts of rudeness than I've ever even had acts of kindness. I can count on my one hand how many acts of kindness I've ever received, but I can't tell you how many times I've had a random act of rudeness. So I've always made sure to try to be that person who offers up the random acts of kindness, and I really try as best as I can to make people's days better, because I know what it's like to have a really bad day going on and just everybody's making it worse.
What's been a humbling experience for you?
Honestly, I think the realest, most humbling experience was probably being homeless for a little while, because we were living with various family members because they were always financially on the financial straits. They needed help, you know, and since frankly I'm naturally a hard worker, I'm constantly working full time, they took advantage of that, especially because they saw that I needed a family and I wanted a family. They definitely used it and took advantage of me, and then when it didn't suit them any longer, they threw us pretty much onto the street, which is definitely made us realize who we can trust versus who we can't, and how to stick together in a really bad situation. And we straight up left that place as far behind as possible.
How long were you homeless for?
It kind of depends on your on your use of the term homeless, because when you consider actually straight up living on the streets looking for a place to sleep at night, we were like that for about 2 months. But if you're talking living in and out of hotels and that, just trying to keep yourself off the streets and in a hotel at the very least, we were stuck like that about 8 months. It took a hot minute for us to actually get over that little bump.
How was that?
Honestly, it was rough for a long time, because I was trying to go to school and I was working full time and we were living in a hotel, you know, and it was rough, man. It was rough because the hotel was really expensive. It's more expensive than rent, believe it or not. Like if you're trying to live a month in a hotel, it's almost twice the price of an actual apartment. You know, so trying to stack up, you know, enough for a down payment on an apartment while you're trying to keep yourself afloat in the hotel. It's difficult.
What got you through that?
Honestly, we got lucky, and it was our tax return that got us out of there and into an apartment. But I know not giving up either, because there was a lot of days where I just didn't even want to do it anymore. I didn't even know what I was doing it for anymore. Because not that long after, I actually ended up having to flunk out of school because nobody wanted to be my patient. And they couldn't pass me if I couldn't get anyone to be my patient, you know. So I felt like all of that was for nothing, you know. And even after we had an apartment, it was like, well, what's the point of it? You know what I mean? My education got screwed up, so now I'm still stuck working at the Wendy's, you know, trying to keep this place up. So now where am I going to go from here, you know?
Go in your mind and think. This life event can be mental, physical, or spiritual. Can you tell us about a time in your life that you can relate with the word war?
Honestly, it was when I first moved in with my wife and we were living with her family. That is definitely the epitome of war, because it was war in every sense of the term. Physical, mental, and spiritual. Because honestly, when we first got together, I wasn't really all that strong of a Christian. I was actually pretty doubtful, because look at my life, you know what I mean? I was physically, mentally abused my entire childhood, you know? I had nothing good going for me. I never had any accomplishments worth anything, you know? I barely got a GED, so, you know, I kind of had doubts in my faith, and her family was very Christian because both of her sets of her grandparents are actually pastors, you know, and they both run their own churches, you know. So that was something that was very heavily forced on me the moment I walked through the door, was I had to convert, you know, whether I wanted to or not. And then I started learning more about her family. Like, my first day there, her mom wasn't there because her mom was actually in a mental hospital because she was mentally unwell. You know what I mean? So I met her literally the day she got out, which is pretty interesting if you think about it. Not many people get to say that. And being with people that have substance abuse problems and mental health problems, and you're throwing all those things in together, and then you're adding into the fact that my wife has never brought another guy home, or anyone home for that matter. I'm the first one, and I'm pretty much here to stay. They weren't exactly too thrilled about that, you know? So naturally, there was a lot of bickering, there was a lot of fighting, there was a lot of chaos going on. There's just a lot, especially when you're adding alcohol and drugs into the mix. It just made things so much worse. And then on top of all this, you're trying to deal with your spirituality and trying to find God in the midst of all of this insanity. It almost feels impossible at times. You know, it literally felt impossible at times. Like, there's days where I literally was like, how am I even doing this? How are we even going to survive this? How are we going to get out of this, you know? Why are we doing this at all, you know? And I realized that the reason why I was trying so hard is because I knew that these were my in-laws. If I was going to have a family unit at all, I knew that they were going to be my biggest chance at that. So I put in every ounce of work and every ounce of patience that I had to try to make it work, but it just never did, unfortunately. They just never came around, I guess.
How was it spiritually for you? Did you search for God, and did you?
I searched for God very deeply, because especially in that situation when they were trying to manipulate God into all these different things to serve them, it was very difficult. It was extremely difficult. So I had to put out everything else. I had to ignore everyone else. And honestly, one of the things I tried to focus on was just myself, my own relationship. I just started writing in a notebook because I'm not one of those people that can pray out loud like that. I'm not like that. I'm very quiet. I'm very reserved. So for me, it was much easier just to write letters to him instead. So I started doing that, and I kept doing that. And then my wife took me to a small church inside of our town where we were living at the time. And that was a very unique experience as well. You know, it was a very special experience because in such a small church, it was so powerful. That was the first time in my life that I ever saw someone go underneath the power of God before, where they just hit the floor. You know, and it was interesting because I saw the woman in front of me falling to the floor a few seconds before she actually did. And I'd never seen that happen before, and I just kind of, because everyone was worshiping and singing, and I kind of just leaned over and like, she's okay, right? You know, I'd never seen that before, and she kind of just explained to me after what was going on. And ever since then, I've always wanted that experience for myself. I've yet to have it, but I know one day that I will have it. And I did find God eventually, and it's taken a lot of work and taken a lot of time and a lot of patience, frankly, on his part with me and how I give, but it's definitely been worth it, all that hard work, because I don't know, I just feel like this void that used to be there is kind of filled in a way. I mean, yeah, there's still emptiness there, but at least I feel like there's someone watching out for me, you know, at least there's some kind of hope laying around. And honestly, when you see all the spiritual things that I have, you kind of can't deny it. You know what I mean? It's kind of hard to refuse, like, you know?
What's one of the spiritual things you've seen?
Honestly, as far as that...
That makes you not deny.
Yeah, like where you cannot question it. Mm-hmm. It has to be, honestly, either when you know for a fact that you have basically come face to face with an angel on earth that God has sent to test you, or when you pray for something very hard and you see it come true. Even if you have to keep working for it, you know it's there. And that's all that matters. And honestly, I think that's probably what solidified my faith, even though that came later.
Same type of question. Go in your mind and think. This life event can be mental, physical, or spiritual. Can you tell us about a time in your life that you can relate to the word peace?
Honestly, right now. I'm finally at a point in my life where things are actually pretty calm. There's no insanity going on. Right now it's just me and my wife and our apartment, and that's it. We don't have any drama from any toxic people. We're not dealing with anything that we don't want to deal with anymore. We're just focusing on us, what we want to do, and who we want to be as people. And we're not thinking about anybody else anymore. Because sometimes that's what you have to do, even if it's hard.
Who do y'all want to be as people?
Honestly, we just want to be good people at the end of the day. We just want to be good people who have left at least a good mark on the world. You know, who have left more good than bad.
Can you tell us about a truly difficult time in your life, how it felt, how you persevered?
Honestly, I've known many difficult times in my life. I think the first thing that comes to mind at this moment is probably the worst day of my life, I would have to say. And that was the day that, horribly, it was on Christmas Eve, but it was the night that we were rejected for an adoption. Absolutely. It still bothers me to this day, even though it was 3 years ago, almost 3 years ago now. You know, we've worked trying to get back ever since, because we were denied for, frankly, a jacked up reason. Because I'm transgender and the place was Catholic. They said it was fine to begin with, but they just took us on a ride, basically. And they waited up until the very last second after, frankly, after the guy who came to do our home study did some real dirty stuff, and said some real nasty stuff. And they denied us right after that. And I knew the moment that he left that door that he would not be coming back. And that we were going to be denied just because of, frankly, how they were. It wasn't even our fault, And it left me with such a great feeling of being cheated and being basically being taken for a ride. You know what I mean? Like, they screwed us out of money. Like, they screwed us out of a lot. And like, our apartment complex was even getting up our rear ends because, frankly, we were having them over so much and we were causing such a ruckus trying to make sure that place was up to snuff. You know what I mean? And to have all that basically fall for nothing. And then to have the apartment complex literally evict us not even that long later because they went into, irreversible debt. And they had to sell off the complex, so they evicted anyone who wasn't on government housing, us included. So not only were we denied an adoption, but literally, like, within the month, we were kicked out of our apartment. You know what I mean? So I'm forced to say that we were denied for a reason, but I'm still looking for that redemption. I'm still looking to get that back. I'm still looking to right that wrong, and I can't stop until I do. Even if it makes me sound crazy, even if it makes me sound obsessed and insane, I don't know, that's just what drives me. That's what keeps me going.
How do you deal with that in moving forward?
Honestly, excruciating. I don't trust anybody, especially agencies. Definitely not, because we've been rejected by a lot because we're transgender and interracial, and we want to adopt special needs children, and most agencies will deny you for one reason or another. There's very few that will take, and ironically, the only agency we found in the city got shut down not too long after. They got bought out by another agency that barely is set up now, and it took them well over a year to get set up.
Do you have ways of finding peace?
Absolutely. I paint. Honestly, sometimes I'll just sit at a wall and just let myself think and meditate for a while, just kind of sit there and just feel. Just try to figure out what I'm feeling, how it feels, what it feels like, and why I'm feeling that way. Other times, I'll just write it all out, I'll just get a piece of paper and a notebook, and a pen, and just start writing out everything I'm thinking.
Could you tell us about a truly joyous moment in your life and how that felt?
Honestly, the first moment that comes to mind is definitely when I met my wife for the first time, because we were long distance for a year and a half before we actually got to meet in person. And that was awesome. It was definitely worth the 42-hour Greyhound ride. Absolutely. I mean, come on, like, imagine 42 hours on a Greyhound in some sweatpants and a dusty old sweater. Like, I was not smelling right at all. You know what I mean? Especially because I had a bunch of layovers, and then we couldn't find each other at first. Like, I almost missed my stop because I was so excited. And then I immediately, jumped off the bus, and I immediately kind of started looking around, and then all of a sudden I saw her looking by the door, and, I just felt, my heart jump up in my chest, and I'd never felt that, giddy before or excited before, I couldn't contain myself. I just wore this giant grin that, frankly, I haven't really felt since, And I just jumped and grabbed her, held her as tightly as I could because, we finally did it. We finally met each other, you know what I mean? We made it legit. After all that hard work and perseverance, we were together in person in that moment, in a Greyhound station.
What keeps you up at night?
The uncertainties of tomorrow. Absolutely. Just not only the paranoid fear of the past repeating itself in various ways, but definitely all the uncertainties that you're forced to face regularly. You don't know what's going to happen tomorrow. You don't know what's going to happen next week. All you can do is try to do the best you can to help pave your path for what you want to do. You don't really know where it's going to end up. You could work your ass off for 5 years and then end up nowhere. And then you feel like you wasted that 5 years, But even if you do, you still got to find something in it. That's what I've learned throughout life, is you have to learn something from every experience, even if it's a waste of time or just meaningless suffering in the moment. There's something. There's always something. You know what I mean? Even if it's just appreciating someone in your life just that much more, or just kind of learning something about yourself that maybe you didn't understand before, you know?
What keeps you going every day?
Ironically, also the future, because I know that I want to build a better tomorrow for myself and for others, you know what I mean? And frankly, I'm stubborn. I am as stubborn as they come, and my stubbornness to frankly do right for people is what keeps me going. I want to help all the people that are unwanted and forgotten. You know what I mean? I want to take care of that, because frankly not enough people do. They just don't, because they don't care. And that's sad, frankly. Nobody cares about anybody anymore, and that's honestly really sad, because we're all human and we're all stuck here on this planet together. And I don't understand why, honestly, we can't just let bygones be bygones and kind of just go about our days.
Imagine you're in the hospital today with only hours to live. What would be your regrets, if any?
Honestly, the only regret I would probably have is learning how to kickflip. Ironically, because I work so much that I can't find the time to skateboard, and when I do find the time to skateboard, the weather sucks. So it's really trying to force myself to find that time to do it. You know what I mean? It's just one of those things, unfortunately. But beyond that, I try to live my life without regrets at all.
You told me what your dreams were as a kid. What are your dreams now?
Honestly, obviously, the clearest thing for me is obviously an author, but I have much bigger dreams than that. I don't want to just be any author who just sells whatever. I want to take, because writing is my passion, so I want to take the money I earn from my passion and I want to put it into building someone else's future. And what I want to do with that, honestly, my biggest dream is to run my own orphanage, is to have a place where all the unwanted children can be raised in a loving family environment. And especially because I'm gifted enough to understand medicine the way I do and medical conditions the way I do, I feel like I should definitely give back to the world in that sense. And I can definitely make a difference in that sense, and that's all I ever wanted to do. I just want to help people, you know?
You're the co-author of your life story. What's your picture perfect ending? And it's not necessarily the end, it's just if it were a movie or a book. Mm-hmm. What's that scenic ending for you?
I definitely think that scene would have to be just me outside of the orphanage that I'm running. It's sunset out, you know, I'm sitting in a rocking chair watching all the kids play with my wife sitting next to me, maybe sipping a nice hot cup of coffee, you know, and just, we made it. You know, just sitting there and just thinking to myself, we did it. You know, it's like one of those old 80s movies where you just want to jump in midair and throw your fist up, you know? It's one of those moments, you know? Because, like, after everything, you overcame it and you got exactly what you wanted and you're making that difference.
That's it.
Okay.